Welcome back into another episode of the Glue Guys. And yet again, a good episode. We keep the streak alive.
My
Kansas
God.
has a tough road win at Texas Tech, go into pretty hostile environment. The welcome back of Kevin, and they ball out. They get the
Right.
job done, grind it out. Then they come home, have some tough matchups with where they have a tough matchup with Oklahoma and go down 10 points with 5 minutes left, come back, get the win
Right.
again. So yet again, starting off the podcast and on a high note, I will say though, and I as good as it is to be a Jayhawk fan, I just did a podcast before this with the Ain't No Seats podcast. Good podcast. Go check it out. And you know what they did to me?
What's that?
They finished the episode by talking about the Oregon game.
Oh, they did that to you?
They did that to me. They just had to they had to go into this we have to bring up, we finish every episode with talking about the Oregon game, and we had to bring it up because you're one of the first players that we've had on it. Man. I mean, you want to
Why
talk
did you
about
say?
a mood killer.
No kidding. I would have just said, okay, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then
Just
I would've
you just
stood
see
up and
meeting
took all
ended.
the stuff off.
I should have just hung up. I mean, we were already at the end. I should have just ended the call there.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
that kind of killed my mood. But now we're back on the Glue Guys. We know on the Glue Guys not to bring that up. We know better than that, right?
Right.
So we can focus on the positives, which is Kansas getting it done yet again. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I know Kansas fans are spoiled by Bill Self and year in, year out being good, but you just look across at what's going on in Kentucky with Calipari. They're 10-6, 1-3 in league. Just lost at home to, I think, an 8-9 team or something. I mean, could you even imagine what would be going on with Kansas fans if Bill Self did that?
Oh, it would be ridiculous. I mean, because the thing is that Bill Self has set such a precedence of winning, and it feels like what has been his worst record in his tenure.
I think that, I mean, from my recent memory, it could have been worse before, but I look back to that one team. I believe that it was after the Final Four year. It was after Devontae left and stuff. I think they had Dedrick Lawson was their main scorer and stuff. That was a down year. You surprisingly enough, Joel Embiid and Andrew Wiggins was my worst team that I was on as far as record goes. We lost 10 games that year, and that was terrible.
Right.
But I mean, you just look at it and it's like you have a 10-loss season, and that's like a down year. Whereas you see some of these programs that go through a down year and they're unranked, struggling. I mean, they may be middle of the pack of their league, but not Kansas, not Coach Self. He just gets it done. I mean, he gives you something to root for every year and a good team out on the court.
And that's the thing too, is that what's so amazing, and the reason why you don't see back-to-backs very often, and we talked about this earlier, it's because it's hard to repeat. It's emotionally hard. You have players who are from teams that are that good. You often will see a lot of defections where people will end up going off to the NBA, and you're trying to reload, and it kind of is it really is mind-boggling that he's able to be at such a high level for so many years. But think about it too. You guys won. What did the streak end for wins? And
I think it was 13 straight or something, 14 straight. I don't know. We set the record. I know that much.
It was a lot. I mean, you won a lot and so that consistency shows you have to put, when people lose, you have to put the blame on the head coach. But when people win, especially consistently, you have to then praise the head coach, because it really does begin and end with Bill Self. And the thing is, too, is you saw it in the game as well against Oklahoma, where down 10, and then all of a sudden now it's like we've got to start really picking up the pace here and getting start pressing full court, and let's change the dynamic a little bit, and it paid off.
Well, let's talk about that game a little bit. First of all, I would like to give another shout out, thank you to DraftKings, because their algorithm for some reason just doesn't factor in the fact that Allen Fieldhouse is like the toughest place to finish a game. And so they
So you
treat
just wait for them to be behind at halftime
it's
and then drop the money on
it's
it?
funny because I'm sitting there watching the game with Kelly, and I'm so confident in this team and their ability to come back that there was a point that they were going down, and I'm like almost like, okay, just go down a little bit more.
Right, right.
Just give me a little bit better odds, and eventually the plus 550. So you're telling me they had the ball down 10 with 5.5 minutes or something. They have possession at Allen Fieldhouse against the Oklahoma team that's not world beaters. And they're plus, you're telling me that 1 out of 5-6 times they're not going to, win that game, because that's all you need to be profitable.
Right.
And you just, poker teaches you just take that, and, you're going to lose sometimes, but that's better than, it's going to win more times than not as far as winning your money in. And so, yet again, I got a nice little bet in there at plus 550 down 10, and they made it happen. They put together stop after stop. They went through a stretch where it felt like hours of real time of no baskets, just free throws, no baskets. It was a bunch of forced shots that just weren't going in. And they proved again that they had some maturity to bounce back from that. And when it mattered the most, make those shots, get those stops on the other end. And of course, Allen Fieldhouse is always going to help you out. If you start a momentum run, they'll make sure that you finish the job.
Right. And when we started talking about that 10 points, and that was kind of right about that time, right about that 5-minute mark. And it's funny because, well, I wasn't betting at all. So you didn't have to worry about me trying to figure this out. But it did feel like it was the I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. You know what? I would say it this way. It was almost like Coach Self somehow magically said, it's time. Okay, let's stop screwing around. And then the players are like, oh yeah, let's just stop screwing around with these guys. Let's go play KU basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And they got after him. They defended. There were a couple of both ways, a couple of things. I was like, is that going to be an offensive foul? No. Okay, let's just play.
Yeah.
And they made big shots. They defended the three because they tried to get a couple shots up, and they defended well. But is this the appropriate time to talk about Mr. Adams or not? Because
I think we can. Crap. We might as well.
Because if you think about, we've been talking about him and this, and is he the right, blah, blah, blah. That's all out the window now. And you know what I mean? The guy has proven that he's the right fit for that spot, unless something changes. And I can tell you right when, and this is going to go under the radar a little bit, but did you notice right when there was during that initial burst to trying to cut into that 10-point lead, there were 2 offensive rebounds by KJ Adams that then led to the 3 to cut it to 5.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is that those are the little things. Like people will see the big 3, right? But they won't really think about or see that it took the hustle of KJ Adams to get those 2 extra possessions to be able to cut that to 5. And then next thing you know, KU was on its way.
Yeah. And 22 points, he balled out again. We every episode, at least me, and I should know better because the people were doing this to me during my time there. I was always trying to find, okay, what's a better option? And he just continues to improve. His free throw shooting has improved tremendously. I think he started terribly and then now is like killing it. And then on top of it, he's developed that little mid lane jump little floater, which you and I know is really important for somebody undersized. Jamari Traylor actually developed a pretty decent one, but that's something that's really important because then you don't have to go into somebody who's bigger. And it's just like he's getting those little drop offs now. He's getting those dunks. I mean, the rebounding isn't quite at the level that I would want, but you have guards that are big for their position who are helping out
Right.
with the rebounding. And now it's come to a point where I just am more comfortable with him in the game
No
than
question.
anybody else. And I think that he's getting more confident. The players around him are getting more confident with him. And at this point in time, I'm thinking he may be the answer for the 5 spot. Now we're just trying to figure out who his backup's going to be.
Right. And so here are the reasons why I think somebody who is undersized. Here are some of the characteristics of somebody who is undersized can still play that position at a high level. And I don't know how high a level I played it, but I was certainly undersized
Yeah.
with being the starting center on a Pac-12, Pac-10 then school, going against 6'11", 7 feet, almost every night. And I think there's a few factors of it. First of all, I think that you have to be able to understand that and acknowledge that you are undersized. And it may sound weird, but that I had to come to the realization that, yeah, I'm just not as big as these guys, right?
Mhm.
But I would then try to figure out, how do I counteract their size with what? And I would counteract that with speed and quickness. And so
Mhm.
he's very quick around the basket. He has a great burst off 2 feet. I mean, he gets off the ground really, really quickly.
Mhm.
And then the other thing too about it is that his strength. He's a strong guy.
Mhm.
So defensively, you're able to really still hold your ground, not just, sometimes he's going to get shoved under, but most of the time he's able to hold his ground. And because he does have that quick burst off of 2 feet, he's able to still either block shots or kind of deterred or get in the way of it. So you have to be able to counter it somehow. And big guys just sometimes after a while just get tired of dealing with these 6'7" guys, because it's
Mhm.
like, man, you guys are all over the place. You're every time I look, you're right in my face. And you can still have success even though you're undersized, but you just have to understand kind of those pieces to it in order to be successful.
Yeah, and you know how much there were games where I would prefer to go against somebody who was 6'11" as opposed to some quick little, like,
Right,
6'6", 6'7" guy.
right.
And that's just how it is sometimes. But a question I have for you now, you
Yeah,
see KJ, he's kind of emerging as that guy. He's probably going to expand his minutes, expand his role. Coach Self is putting more trust in him. I know his teammates are. But now you
right.
have 4 guys behind him who all at one point in time had that sliver of hope of, hey, I can emerge as that guy and be that guy. And now they're kind of just getting shuffled in and out in spot minutes. What as a coach are you doing to try to still, keep them motivated, even though they're probably at this point playing for that backup role in those spot minutes that are going to be spurts of maybe 2-3 minutes at a time?
So I think what you have to do is almost have the same mentality as if you were a backup on any football team that's out there. Is that you have to still be ready to shine and be ready to roll in case something does happen to KJ.
Mhm.
Injuries happen in basketball too.
Yeah.
And so you never know. And so I think what I would do is really challenge them to say, hey, who is going to be that person who is going to step in, and how your reward in the short term, or at least now, is you get those backup minutes,
Mhm.
right? Those are going to be yours, and then the other ones. There's going to stop being 4 guys
Yeah.
getting 2 minutes, right? It's
Mhm.
going to end up being that there's one that gets 7.5, and then the others get 0 or
Mhm.
very close to 0. And so it's going to take them fighting for that backup spot. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because again, something happens with KJ, well, then it's going to be next player up.
Yeah.
And that person is going to be thrust immediately into a more prominent role. Is he going to go straight into playing as many minutes as KJ? Probably not, but they're still going to have a more prominent role right away. And I can tell you, you look at that bench, they were excited. Like, there wasn't anybody
Mhm.
who was, you could just see it on their faces. I mean, and Allen Fieldhouse does that to you, right? I mean, it's like
Mhm.
everybody was excited. Everybody was trying to get this dub, and whether you came in for 3 minutes or didn't play at all, you were still excited about the final outcome.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. I think that it is important because you are one play away from, if KJ gets hurt, all of a sudden there's all these minutes that has to go to someone, and
Right,
you're stepping into, in my opinion, the number one team in the country, with a huge role with a lot of people relying on you, so you have to stay ready for that. And then there's always the potential for foul trouble in games as well, and we haven't
right,
seen that really yet with KJ, in recent memory. But there's going to be those games where, as he's expanding his minutes, and you're expecting maybe 25, 30 minutes out of him, but he goes out there and gets 2, 3 fouls early on, and then maybe checks back
right,
in, gets another one, where somebody's going to have to step up and play 20 some minutes.
right,
And you have to put yourself in line to be that guy, because then you show out in those 20 minutes, then maybe you start
right.
earning a little bit more moving forward. So I think these bigs are going to be able to stay motivated. You are at Kansas, so you're not at some team that, is right now 4-12, and you're just, hoping to get some minutes and, not really playing for much. You're playing
Right.
for a national championship and a role on a national champion contender team.
Right.
And so I think these bigs can stay motivated and stuff. I want to get into a little bit about why they were down to begin with, because
Okay.
we talk about the comeback, we talk about all the contributions, but
Right.
they found themselves yet again in a position where they had to make that comeback. And I had heard them say it on air, and I think it's kind of the narrative. I don't believe it, because we have Coach Self and Allen
Right.
Fieldhouse, but we very easily could be 0-4 in the league.
Right.
And a lot of teams could be, 4-0 as we are.
Right.
But we're finding ourselves in these tough spots. And again, down 10 with 5 minutes left. I think one of the reasons was the lack of production from Jalen for most of the game, while Grady was getting fronted and taken out of the game himself, and then trying
Right.
to find, where you get those buckets from outside of that. So my question for you, and I have a thought about this, but I want to go to you first.
Okay.
What would you do with Grady? Because you've now seen two teams in league play for sure put emphasis on it, and the other as
Right.
well. But I'm sure more will moving forward, where you just commit one guy and say, take Grady out of the game, and make them score elsewhere. How are you
Right.
handling that as a coach? What type of stuff do you think Coach Self is trying to scheme up now to make sure
Right.
that they're still scoring maybe from other spots, or you get Grady the ball?
So I think that when you have a team like Kansas, the nice part of it is that it's not just one player, and that's a huge benefit, because if you think about it, there are so many teams around the country that have a stud, and then if you get Bill Belichick, meaning they take away that,
Mhm.
then the team doesn't really is going to have to struggle to figure out who else is going to be that person. So I think in this case, yes, teams can do that and they can try to take away Dick, but I think what they're going to start finding out is that eventually Kansas is still going to figure it out, because they still have too many. They have too many players. They have too many good players. They have too many weapons that are out there that are still able to put points on the board. So I'm thinking, for me, is play wise, I'm going to be running things that are essentially not so much away from Grady, but I'm not putting him central into this play, simply because I don't think that it makes sense to have the ball with him and have everybody focused on him.
Mhm.
I'm saying, why don't we get something? This is what I would tell Grady. Here's how I think, until things change a little bit,
Yeah.
and not every coach is going to do this exact same thing, because the ones who've tried it already are 0-2 or 0-3 or whatever it is.
But
So
they've been up, they've blown the game, but it's
they
worked.
have been. I will agree. I agree with that. But I'm saying that, I don't think that it begins and ends with Grady. I think that there was a bit of a coincidence between the two. I don't know if I would 100% put the deficits on the fact that Grady has not been scoring at the level that he has been scoring in the past. So anyway, to go back, kind of your original question is I want to put the ball in the hands of those other playmakers, and what I want to do is I want to force that other team to change what their philosophy is, or at least when by the time they realize it, it's too late because KU is up or is about to win. So, I don't know if that answered or not, but I just, in my opinion. So I guess, so what are your thoughts on it? I mean, for me, you can't force Grady. If they're going to try and take that away, that's okay.
Yeah.
We got too many other weapons, in my opinion.
Well, I would say one, it has worked those 2 games. I know they're 0-2, but I think you saw during that 17-minute stretch or whatever it was where they had no 13, where they had no field goals from the floor, that it just kind of felt like some forced shots, they try to feed it into the big fella Clements a couple times. That didn't work. Jalen tried to go one-on-one against a pretty good defender a couple times. That wasn't really working. The offense just wasn't really flowing as well. Coach Self obviously is going to have some plays and stuff for that. But I try to put on my coaching hat and think of what I would do. And the first thing that came to mind was I would work with Grady on setting the best screens he can, and I would put him in ball screens, because my thought process with the way they're guarding him is that they usually dedicate one guy who's their best perimeter defender to just worry only about Grady. So in my head, and I don't know, I'm new to the coach hat thinking, but I was trying to, think about what could work. If you take Grady and you start putting him into some ball screens, if he's setting any type of screen at all, his man's going to have to help something. If he doesn't, then you're playing off of that. And you're essentially playing 4-on-3 behind that, especially with a good distributor like DeJuan. The other guy I would do it with is Jalen. Get Jalen going downhill to his right hand after a screen by Grady. You have to help on him. Somebody has to step in front of him, because if Jalen even gets a shoulder onto you, he's so strong that you're not going to get back in front of him once he gets a step. So somebody has to help off of that, and somebody would have to help from the corner or a different spot. And then those are just easy passes from him if he can't just go and get a layup himself. So I would tell Grady, I would get him practicing ball screens a ton, all the right angles, making sure he's setting them at the right angles, and then just put him into ball screens and make his man have to help. And then I would even run a ball screen, like fade screen or something for him, and just start getting him moving into that. Because if they're going to play him the way they are, and I watched, quite a few possessions where the guy doesn't even pay attention to anything.
He's like looking at him eye to eye.
Yeah. So if that's the game plan, that in his head, he's taught to just not help with anybody but him. And I just feel like the best way to kind of combat that would be to start, forcing him to have to help by having Grady setting screens and, kind of playing off of that. So you're the coach. I want to know, what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that could work in a situation?
I do like it, but see, the thing is that I think I like better having that same action that you're talking about happen on one side without Grady. You can have some weak side stuff. And because we just talked about the fact that man is not helping in any way. Yeah. And so if you get some ball screen on the wing, and you have somebody come out, spread that out. I think you can get some movement, get some courses to the basket without anybody even thinking about it. If you think about it, because they're so much worried about him on one side. So you see what I'm saying?
I agree. There's a few ways you can approach this. And I think this last game was, if I had to guess, get into Coach Self's head, this last game was probably the game that made him go, okay, we gotta really figure this out. Before that, it was like, all right, a team took him away, we'll figure it out, this and that. I think this last game showed that this is probably going to be the Big 12 for most of the rest of the Big 12 season. And you're going to face this more times than not.
Right.
And you're going to see Coach Self draw up some stuff. And I think there's a few different ways you can go about it. And you're going to see some teams struggle because all of a sudden that's not going to work anymore. You're not going to be able to play him that
Right.
way. Once Coach Self is going into a game with game planning that in practice of how to utilize that, because these guys aren't worried about anybody else. And
Right.
that's going to hurt, whether it's help side defense, whether it's ball screens, whatever it is.
Right.
You're going to find a lot of times that against a team that is as good as Kansas, like you said, at multiple spots, you can't do that.
Right.
It's not like you're playing, Davidson and Steph Curry back in the day, where it's like
Right.
Steph and then everybody else, and you're like, okay, if we just take him out of the game, we should be okay.
Put
There's
two
some
players
other
on
good.
him and figure it out.
Yeah, and you can't do that with Kansas. So I think that you see this game kind of be the one that gets Self, in his office, drawing some stuff up, practicing it, and getting those guys prepared to take advantage of it. Because
Right.
I don't see why, if I'm a coach of a different team, I don't just keep doing that until I see it not work, because it's worked twice now, where I think that you put a little bit of awkwardness on the team so far. You could see that during that stretch, they were trying to force a little bit too much.
Right.
They were trying to do too much one-on-one off the ball.
Right.
Grady was just trying to run to the ball to get open sometimes, and that's not going to work,
Right.
especially
Right.
against a good defender that just knows that he has no other job besides taking you away.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see, how Coach Self kind of draws this up and handles it moving forward.
Yeah, and I'd like to see him, in transition, because I think that that's something too, where not always is it a situation where the guy guarding Grady's guarding that guy.
Yeah.
So you start thinking about it on the other side. You might be saying, hey, on these possessions, I want you to just go. And let's see if we can get that ball up the field and up the court, and see if you can get them. Yeah, I'm still in winning fantasy football mode. Get that ball up the court and see if you can get some easy buckets, because that's nice for a kid to see the ball go through the hoop a little bit as well. So, but good problems to have, man.
Good problems to have, and we're trying to break things down, but at the end of the day, yeah, it could be a lot worse. You see Baylor 0-3 in the league, struggling tonight. I didn't get to finish the game, but struggling to win at West Virginia, possibly going 0-4. We talked about Kentucky earlier. I mean, it's just crazy that we're sitting here right now trying to figure things out, but they're the number 2 team in the country behind Houston, who doesn't play many people, and top of the league again, looking really good, which brings me to our sub in sub out today.
Well, wait, before we go to it,
yeah,
can we talk about the triple overtime Oklahoma game a little bit?
Sure. What do you want to talk about? I they brought it up on the broadcast last night, so it brought back some memories.
I know. I mean, it was an amazing game, in which case you were part of it as well. And it was, we start thinking about, some of the great performances, obviously with Buddy Hield, unbelievable. I mean, it was just crazy. So I guess my question is, what memory stands out to you about that night the most?
So many. One that just came to mind when you were talking about Buddy going crazy was Frank requesting to guard him as an undersized point guard and guarding him just about as good as you could on every possession, and Buddy was still making shots. I mean, it was I was watching Frank, because he just took that mindset, like, he's not scoring anymore, put me on him, and he was everywhere. Buddy was everywhere with a hand in his face. And Buddy was making fallaways, just I was in shock. And what a fun game. I mean, I've said this before, but there's very few times where a game that hyped up leading into it exceeds the hype. I mean, you have number 1 in one poll was Kansas. I think we were number 1 in the USA Today or something. They were number 1 in the coaches poll. You got this big matchup, everybody was watching, and we're going to triple overtime with them. So that was fun. They brought it up on the podcast I was just on, though, and they forgot about it, which I was happy that they did. But they were like, yeah, at the end of the game, something happened, and they I forgot his name, but they were like, he went to the free throw line and just
Oh yeah,
drifted and this and
I
that. I was like,
remember.
you know what happened?
Yeah, I
I
do
was
know what
like,
happened. I was sitting there watching it, and literally I almost could not watch because I was so nervous that this kid was going to make the free throw, and that you were going to be
roasted.
vilified for the foul. And I mean, I was sitting there just literally like, please, if there's ever a free throw that somebody misses, please make it be this
Yeah.
one. And he missed it. But you
Oh, but
said coach,
it wasn't even close. I mean,
right,
I remember Coach Self even before going to it being like, oh, he's
right.
gonna miss these. We're
He's
going to
gonna miss it.
overtime. Like,
Right.
like you're like, all right, like if you say so,
All
he's
right,
like, just
thank
get the
you.
rebound. And we'll take
Right,
this into overtime. And I think he knew, most people in the building knew he was all pounding his chest walking to the line, but like that's too for a 50% free throw shooter or something to at the end of that game in the field house, you're telling me you're gonna step to the line. That's when you short arm it a little bit. But I mean
yeah,
that was fun. It was definitely one of those games for me personally where that was actually so that was my junior year, sophomore year. I started towards the end of the year, was getting some momentum. Junior
right,
year was in that kind of weird phase where I had some injuries early on, wasn't
right.
playing great, lost some minutes. And that game was, I think, Hunter Mickelson's first start, or he started that game. He only played like 5 minutes, but I remember him starting. I remember in the first half, me playing so poorly that I didn't think I was going to get into the game again. And
I
then
remember that too.
next thing I'm a big part of the end of the game, the all three overtimes.
Right.
One of the overtimes I had like
The other,
a streak of scoring,
right,
which was rare for me at that time. But coming out of that game was what led to that confidence for me,
right,
from coach, from the other players. That was, I think, pretty close to that whole meeting with the other four starters where they were like, hey, we want to play with Landon in the starting lineup. Because yeah, we were out there, we grinded together. And that's those type of games where those little things matter at a
right,
next level, just where you are position wise, where you are, on defense, the screens you set, the rebounds you get,
right,
everything matters. And I think that's when it was like, okay, we can trust Landon in these situations.
right,
And from there, I felt really confident. So that was a fun game for me, not only for,
right.
the history of being in a game like that, which doesn't happen very often. I mean, not many people get to play in that type of game. But then also what it meant for that season, because after that, I didn't look back on that spot.
Well, and the thing too was, it was such a big game to begin with, and as you mentioned, you were a part of that final part, part of the regular regulation, and then in all the overtimes, and it's one of those things. I mean, just think about this. That was 6 years ago, 5 years ago,
Yeah, a while ago.
something like that, right? So
Yeah.
think about the fact that you know they're talking about it on a broadcast on
Yeah.
a team that you played on from 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
That tells you kind of that how
Oh yeah.
memorable of a game that was, and
Yeah.
so it
I
was it
mean,
was really fun to watch for
in
sure.
one night, there were mentions back to two games I was able to be a part of, which was West Virginia
West
comeback and the
Virginia,
Oklahoma game. I mean,
right?
so it's pretty cool because I was able to be a part of some really memorable games on some
Right.
fun teams. A big part of it too. It's not like these games I was just sitting the whole
Right.
time or playing a few
Yeah.
spot minutes. I mean, I was in for the majority of the games and the endings of them, and so
Right.
really fun. And when I look back at the disappointment of a game like Oregon that had to be brought up today, it does sweeten things a little bit because I was able to be a big part in so many fun and big games during my time there. That it's like those are huge games that even team players that are on teams that make deep runs in the tournament to Final Fours and stuff, that's
Right.
the games that I was able to be a part of are matching some of those games, and so
Right.
that's been fun, and it's fun to hear them, talk about it and think back on it, and be able to say that I was, a big part of those teams.
Right. Fun times for sure. I mean, and you start thinking about there's so many others of games too
So
that were
many,
just
yeah,
big game, fun games that
yeah.
you were a part of. Yes, the one wasn't great, but take
A
away
lot of
that there
fun
was a
ones.
lot of other
Yeah,
great games.
yeah. Oh,
So you should
I
be proud
just
of yourself for
No, I
your
am, and
time.
it's fun to look back on it and whatnot. I mean, I even saw a highlight from this was a couple of days ago from, you remember the block my sophomore year against West
Oh,
Virginia?
I do. West
Yeah,
Virginia.
like that, and that's just fun because like at the time I was playing spot minutes, but I mean he went with
Yeah.
me through that whole ending and the overtimes,
In the overtime, yeah.
and yeah, I mean I was able to play a big role in that too. I mean it's there's a lot of fun memories for sure. Um, so
All
yeah,
right, sorry, I digress. I was
yeah, yeah,
thinking, Oklahoma, and it made me think of
yeah.
it, and I just know that how important of a game that was. How
Mhm.
because again, it kind of catapults you into kind of solidifying that starting spot, and so
It's
anyway,
hard to not. I mean, after a game like that, it's one of those things where I was fortunate to be the one that took advantage of it. But like, if that was
right,
somebody else, if that was Hunter, if that was Jamari, if that was
right,
like Sheck, if Sheck got in and did that, if
right,
any of those guys went in and was a big part of it, it's like going to a war with these guys, and then you come out the
right.
other side, and you're like, I know I can count on that guy.
Yes,
And so that
your
was
brother.
that was huge for me, to solidify that. And we had seen Coach Self put some trust in me before my sophomore year and stuff. And so to go back to it and then prove him right in that game was fun. And then
Right.
after that, I think the very next game was maybe the home West Virginia game where I had like 16 rebounds and played well or whatever it was,
Right.
and that's when it really was like, all right, I got the picture with Dickie V, the
Right.
selfie with him and stuff. But all right, enough about me. Let's get back to this year's team. I want to do the sub and sub out because we were talking about how good this year's team is right now again.
Right.
And I want to know, are you subbing in or subbing out? At this point in the season, this year's team is better than last year's team.
At the same
Right now.
time,
Like right now, would you say this year's team is better than last year's team? You sub it in or out?
I'm gonna let you go first on this one.
Okay. I'm going to sub in. And I will say that I've subbed in on this from the beginning. I think from the jump, I thought this team was better. I said this before the Duke game after a few exhibition games against like
Yeah.
Fort Hayes and stuff. And
And we're like,
Washburn.
wait till they play somebody, buddy.
Yeah, you were telling me, watch out, you're gonna come back on this and regret that and this and that. But I mean, outside of a Tennessee game, which was third game in 3 days in Bahamas, against a team that I think played pretty well and was the first kind of like tough test as far as size goes inside and for KJ and stuff. And things didn't shake our way, but like I've had full confidence. And I told you that for a second episode or whatever. I thought this year's team was better and had potential to be better come down the stretch. And there's a few reasons why. First, just being that I think last year's team, wow, they did everything they needed to win a national championship. And those guys are Kansas legends for that. And I would trade a lot of things from my time at Kansas to have a national championship like they do.
Right.
I think that all of a sudden you forget that around this time last year, there were a whole lot of struggles and a whole lot of holes that people were unsure about. I remember Remy was going through his problems. He was hurt most games, pretty much a non-factor in some.
Right.
People were still unsure about DeJuan Harris. A lot of people felt like this isn't the answer. We need Remy back. We need this and that. You had David McCormick inside that wasn't starting. They were starting Mitch Lightfoot at this time. They were experimenting. I think they even started KJ at one point in time.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, and David, it was like, hey, could we just get a decent performance out of him, just anything and stuff. And, I thought there was a lot of questions about the team. And I feel like this year's team, like there's questions, but they're answering those questions. I think when you look at what a national championship contending team needs to have, they have a lot of those pieces. And one of the final pieces that I was questioning was how they would handle the 5 spot and how they would handle playing against another, big team, and how, a team like Tennessee and whatnot. But they're showing, KJ showing improvement. They're showing that they're going to be able to potentially handle that with him and with some traps. And they're showing a lot of guts in these comeback wins. They're showing the ability to close out games, showing the ability to get scoring from other areas when top guys are being shut down. And I think this, like, I would take this team at this point in time, not only for where they're at right now, but also for their potential future and where they can grow. Because I think that there's still an emergence waiting to happen from one of those 4 bench bigs. I think somebody's going to get some confidence. KJ's shown that he's just going to continue to get better. And I think there's going to be a surprise guy, whether it's Pettiford, I think MJ Rice off the. There's going to be somebody else too who shows that he can step up to the plate and give some minutes off the bench. And so I'm taking this team. I know it sounds crazy because last year's team hung a banner, but I think that you go into the tournament and there's going to be a handful of teams that can win, and KU's usually one of them, and they were last year. And you just have to have things break right your way. You have to play well in big, games. Have your off game be against a team that you can withstand an off game against. A bunch of things like that. But it's still. If we're going with the same situation, I'm going to take this year's team. And I think that the few guys who had that experience last year, that's very beneficial as well. Whereas the team the year before didn't have that necessarily, going through the COVID year. I know they were good teams and stuff, but they didn't go and win a national championship like a couple of these starters did. And so I'm going to take this team, and I'm just happy that I have it documented and out to the public that a few days into this, I was saying this year's team, was better and had potential to be better, because they're just proving me right with how they're playing. So I'm going to leave it to you and see what you have to say now.
All right. Hey, all very, very good points, but I'm going to sub out.
Okay.
And here's what I want you to envision. Okay. You and I are at a playground. Okay. Playground. We got the hoops on both sides. We are assembling our teams. And I'm sitting on my side and I say, well, first, we got your team.
Okay.
You got Wilson. You're like, come on, Wilson.
Yeah.
Dick. We got Dick. We've got Harris, Adams. Let's go. All right. You guys are all on my team, right? And you've got the other players. Okay.
Yeah.
That's on your side. I walk out and I say, Ochai, let's go, man. Brown, let's go. McCormick, where you at? Oh, Remy. Yeah, Remy, come on, let's go. And we're standing there looking across from each other. Do you still like your team as much as you just talked for 10 minutes about versus the team that I got across from you?
Yeah, I do.
Rhetorical question. Hold on.
Yeah, okay, keep going.
All I'm saying is that yes, this team is great. We just talked for 35 minutes, whatever, about how good this team is. But I think you have recency bias and you are forgetting how good that other team was. Now, I know that McCormick wasn't starting and all of that stuff, but your question was, which team is better? And so I think the best way to do it is, if we were on the court playing against each other, just my team versus your team, who wins? And I have to believe that my team is going to win, because the Wilsons are going to negate each other. Maybe your Wilson's a little bit better. Your Harris is a little bit better.
better.
So yes, I'm giving you that. But you don't have an Ochai. You don't have an Ochai. I'm sorry. And Brown is about as good as anybody you got on your side as well. I take Brown over most
Grady?
of your players on your side.
Are you taking Brown over Grady?
Yes, because of the experience.
But you've said it before on here that Grady's shown the maturity as somebody who's been there for a time.
Come on, there's a different. Yeah, there's maturity not opposed to, but in relation to somebody who's a freshman, but but he's not the same level of maturity as Brown. You don't think that people try to take Brown out of the game? He's still figuring out ways to score better than Grady did.
All right. I mean, I'm just saying, if we're at the playground and I have my team, I am happy with my team because
you think you beat me.
I for sure think so. I mean, I think you said I have recency bias for how I'm thinking about this team. I think you have, and most people have recency bias because of how that team performed in the tournament and ultimately winning the national championship, which, just boosts them up a level. But I think if you go, position by position, skill by skill, I'm taking this team. I know top of the top, you got Ochai, who's incredibly good. And if you're going to draft, if we're saying, hey, we're picking teams, who are we going to take first? He's probably going first. Right. But I'm telling you, from top to bottom, I really like this year's team, and I think they've shown it in multiple ways. And I just feel really confident about them. I mean, I feel a different sense about this team when they're in those struggle moments where they go down, or they're trying to figure stuff out. They show a really incredible level of poise, which I think matches. Last year's team did too in a lot of those situations, but it's happening by young guys who can continue to develop a lot. I think that at this point in time, you're not worried. There's a difference between trying to figure out problems with like Remy's injury and like dealing with David not producing like you think he could and stuff. Right. And like right now, they're able to start fine tuning some things. Hey, we spent 20 minutes talking about, how would you treat Grady when he's being guarded in a certain way, which Coach Self can do instead of having to worry about, some major issues that, guys being hurt or guys' mental state. We didn't even think if Remy we didn't know if he wanted to play or what was going on, all kinds of stuff. And so I'm taking this year's team, but it's okay that we disagree on that. I wish there was a way we can do a little simulation and run it and, kind of see, what was what. But I'll tell you what.
Let's go. Remy, let's go. Let's do this. Old Harris, let's do this.
I mean, that's cool. I wish we could, but we can't. But we'll see how this shakes up because it's another good team, and it's fun that you're able to even have that conversation because you see a team like a Kentucky. I love just talking about Kentucky right now because they're doing so bad, but like a Kentucky where it's like, I mean, you're talking about a team that has a returning National Player of the Year inside, and they're struggling. Like you couldn't say, oh, how would this team match up against our national championship team with Anthony? I mean, it's not even close.
That's another game too. The game day at Kentucky for you too. That's on the list of the best games.
But just think about, speaking to Kentucky. Kentucky came in and put a whooping on Kansas at Allen Fieldhouse. I don't think that's happening to this team. I just have a feeling that that wouldn't happen to this team where it's just that big of a difference from start to finish.
That's a good point. I still take my guys one game.
But let's start to wrap this up. This week they have a couple big matchups, potentially a top 15 at home with Iowa State, celebrating the I think 125th year anniversary, big game. And then you're going to go to K-State, which if K-State handles business, that's going to be a top 10 matchup at K-State. I mean, how much fun. They're one of the hottest teams in the country, which if I was a player at Kansas, I would love because how fun is
Oh,
that game going to be?
yeah.
You go to Manhattan,
I've been to that to watch you guys there, and it's fun. That environment
so
is
much
super
fun.
fun.
Now that environment's not like that for anybody else really, but
Right.
but when Kansas comes to
You come to
town,
town.
it's so much fun. So to have them be a
Yeah.
top 10 team potentially, if they can handle business, I think at TCU, which is going to be a tough game, but if they're so hot right now that as long as they don't look ahead to the Kansas game, they should be able to get it done.
Right.
I don't see Kansas dropping it to Iowa State. It's going to be a tough game, but it's at home. I mean, it's if they give another crazy line on DraftKings again, I'm just going to bet it until they learn that it just doesn't. You don't lose very often at home.
Right.
And then going to K-State. What are your thoughts? Is this the time, or is this the time where next episode we come on and we're like, uh-oh, maybe I take back my statement from where this team's at and stuff, because we just struggled and maybe dropped 2 games? Or do you think that we're going to be meeting on this next episode saying, oh, it was another good week to be a Jayhawk?
I think that it's highly unlikely that they drop 2 of them, that they're 0 for 2 after this weekend. So we can pretty much put that aside. But being 1-1, that's a very distinct possibility. It's just it's yes, and they could also be 2-0, but we're getting into the real meat of the schedule here. And don't get me wrong, Oklahoma is it's an okay team, but they also had had this team down by 10 with 5 minutes left, with just an okay team at home. So I just say that, if you're asking me for a prediction, I do think that Kansas drops one of these 2. And which one I don't know. Probably at K-State if I had to choose. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were 2-0. It would surprise me if they were 0-2.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if you really break it down and put like every bias aside and stuff, as far as what you need to do right now, 1-1 is totally fine. Because ultimately, if you win the Big 12, you're a 1 seed. And right now, with the way Baylor is, and just how tough the Big 12 is to get wins and stuff, after starting 4-0, with these 2 really tough games coming up, you split them, you're still in really good shape moving forward. You move on, like whatever, we took a L, but obviously that's not the mindset of those players. And they, not only is it a big game as far as the anniversary where all the alumni and stuff are going to be back for that game, you want to put on a show for all of them and stuff, but then you go to your rival down the street in that environment, you really want to win that. But there will be if they go 1-1, there's no team meetings and stuff after, the players only meeting that comes sometime in the middle of the season. That's not happening yet. And really 0-2, it still may not even cause that, as odd as it sounds. It depends on how the games go. If you get smacked in both or something possible.
Right.
But I mean, this league is just so tough, and wins can go either way. And they could have dropped a couple games leading, so far. But we'll see how they respond. I think that if there is another good week where they go 2-0 and we're back on here, it's going to be really hard for you to make a point that you don't want this team.
No, I hear you.
They're showing everything they need to.
I'm gonna get Dig. I'm gonna go get somebody else over there.
Right. But we'll see. We'll see. And I'm excited for it. I know the players are going to be excited. The coaches are. And it's going to be another fun week of Kansas basketball. And how fun is it to be, a fan? I mean, just spoiled at this point. And I can relate because I'm spoiled, because I'm being able to turn on the TV and see a team that's going to be able to compete for a national championship, play against really good teams in the best conference in the country, and have these fun games where they're coming out on top. So we'll see how it goes. But
I'm a little disappointed you didn't give me any props or shout out to the fact that I'm playing wounded here today.
So that's right. You had your little dentist appointment or whatever.
I had a root canal 3 hours ago. I was sitting in a chair with somebody drilling in my mouth. And so I can't. It's still numb. I can't even. I can't even. Like I'm worried that like drool's going to come down and I wouldn't even notice it.
Well, you did
So
great.
anyway,
I forgot it even
for
happened.
you.
Whatever.
Get this thing done.
You're not supposed to come out and say that. You're supposed to just
Oh, I
power
was
through it and let the
supposed to-
people behind the scenes, give you credit. You're like that one guy that just has to go, oh, by the way, I played hurt this week,
When you get old, I'll take all the accolades that I can get at this point in time. So thank you.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. We've gone a little longer than I was expecting, but it is what it is. We got a lot to talk about, and as always, like, subscribe, leave some comments, let us know what you like, what you don't like. I know I didn't get a guest for this week because I am just terrible at that, but we'll work on it moving forward and stuff. I also like these episodes because it gives us a chance to really break down things and talk basketball, which is fun, and hopefully you fans like it. If you don't like it, then let us know. Just be like, hey,
that's true.
get some more guests on. We can't go through any more hour-long shows of just you guys talking. But
can you just have Self on every week?
Just do a weekly, like how they do with Aaron Rodgers on the McAfee, Pat, whatever.
Yeah, like Tom Brady shows up every Monday.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Possibly.
Glue guys you know what? He could be an honorary glue guy.
Honorary, yeah, because he's technically, as a coach of Kansas, you have to be a glue guy. You got to keep everyone together on the same page and everything.
There you go. See?
Yeah, no, wishful thinking. That guy has more stuff going on than our little podcast. But we'll get him on at some point in time. But anyways, thank you for listening, and we will be back hopefully after a 2-0 stretch and some fun wins. And I hope it's not 0-2, because then we'll really have to just have it be you and me breaking down what's going on. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week.